Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Beyer from GAI Insights, and welcome to our daily GenAI news briefing, where we rate and discuss news items. Our team of AI analysts rate each article as essential, important, or optional for executives and leaders at companies. This briefing is sponsored by Custom GPT, a no-code large language model solution that allows you to create your own chatbot with your own data without making up facts, and is used by leading companies like Adobe, Dropbox, and MIT. Today's discussion will be led by Tanya.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning. And for those of you in New England, we have a beautiful winter day, winter morning, all schools canceled. We have 6 articles for this morning to review. One is about development of agents using a starting kit. So that seems very promising. We have 2 articles covering the pharma industry, and 2 other articles covering sales and marketing, with AI agents becoming our purchasing branch or our purchasing agents, and also LLMs that are brand specific. And then we'll close with an article on executive recruiting firms using AI. So to get us started, Ankaj, let's pull up the first article, please.
Thanks, Tanya. So the first one that we have for today is from BCGX. So BCGX has released a agent kit, which is sort of a starter kit for anyone who wants to build agents.
And Adam, would you like to kick us off with this?
I would love to. Good morning, good evening, everyone. So Agent Kit, BCG, Boston Computer Group, I hope many people are familiar, is a massive consulting firm. And they are now basically bringing to market and making available to everyone a tool that they have developed called Agent Kit. And the deal here is basically what they call constrained agents. And a constrained agent application is a big deal because effectively they put it on rails, right? The number of actions, the number of decisions the agent can make are highly restricted, which significantly increases the reliability, the accuracy, and the safety of the agent's operation. So in that way, it's significant because it's going to speed to market the applications of these agents. And in some ways, it's really just a refinement of existing technologies like Next.js and LangChain, and really pulling those together and making it into a product that's easier for everyone to use. It's significant. I think it's worth noting. I would consider it important news.
Yeah, I liked it, and I thought that it is important as well. What they also did, they essentially put some reasoning capabilities into decision trees that then LLM traverses to generate answers. And that is also very important because you can make it a very specialized agent and using human experts' knowledge into this decision tree.
Right. I think there's 2 things that are important here. That's one, which is the integration of non-LLM technology, that is deterministic, graph following technology, rule-based, whatever you want to call it, with LLM technology to help. The other thing, which is not relevant to LLMs, but I can't help but cite, is it's amazing the transformation in the high-end consulting industry. BCG, Bain, McKinsey all now have very, very serious technical shops that are producing products. Effectively, this is a product. So really interesting how technology has invaded the top tier that 20 years, maybe even 10 years ago would have never done any implementation at all. So interesting, a whole nother discussion about, is that good because they have more insight, or bad because they're now conflicted because they have products that they're selling.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I would that is very, I think, important, and Adam, that it sits on LangChain, and as a result, you can choose the LLM model, open source, whatever it is that you could use for that. So that's another layer of complexity that they took away in some sense for the user.
You know, Adam, it was funny. You introduced BCG as the Boston Computing Group, which they may become, right? It's the consulting group, as you know. I think when you think about the history of automation, we've spent 120 years or so automating the physical world. than about 60 years automating, the structured symbolic world. I think this says, we're really getting into the fact that they're embracing this. All the big guys are embracing this, is saying we're getting into the semi-structured or unstructured world, which often has a higher economic value add. The typical Boston Consulting Group consultant, on average, the revenue per person in BCG would be about $500,000 to $600,000, whereas someplace like Accenture, which dealt with the structured data historically, would be about $160,000 per employee. So this really tells you that AI is moving up in the value-added wins work, words, images, numbers, and sounds tasks.
Hey, John, one other thing I highlight both of your and Tim's comment. I worked 4 years at Deloitte years ago, and we lost the deal to McKinsey because McKinsey said the last thing you'd ever want to do is take strategic advice from a bunch of data center rule geeks. So we've seen consulting become more tech-enabled and from a labor base. I'm wondering what other industries. Do we see the same thing in major law firms? Do we see the same thing in major advertising agencies as they drive towards competitive differentiation?
Yep. Digital products. They need to come up with digital products. It's not just going to be consulting. But good. All right. So I think we all agree with this being an important article. So let's move on to the next, please, Ankush. Thank you.
So the next one is from Iambic Therapeutic. So they have launched a neural plexer technology which can predict protein ligand complex structures.
Tim, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. Again, we're a little bit specific here. I would rate this important for everybody, essential for those in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries. It's exciting, and I'll admit my bias. I love this stuff to death. This is protein interaction, protein ligand they call it, but that's basically just proteins, are these enormous tinker toys that run our body, or Tetris, whatever you want to call them, puzzle pieces that fit together, but they're dynamic. And that's the big, one of the big breakthroughs here. So when you look for drugs, you're basically looking for bindings that get after something you want and alter it, that get in the way of something if it's causing a disease, or enhance something if it's helping prevent the disease. And it's been possible now since AlphaFold to do some prediction, and that's been used quite a bit to help make these drugs faster, find targets and make drugs faster using large language models, because amino acids, ribonucleic acids that make up proteins that run our body are a language. They only go together certain ways. And you can therefore use large language models to generate them and explore the spaces in which they operate. This one also does the dynamic part, at least it says, we'll see, which means that when the two things bind, they also change. That's the whole point. And that conformational change of these very, very complex molecules is non-trivial. And so that's enabled them to get from starting on the idea of a drug to now they're submitting an IND, as they call it, the application to the US FDA in less than 2 years. That's just, that's a 5-10 year process most of the time, and into clinical trials shortly thereafter. So this is really remarkable, as we've been saying for a while in the biotech industry, how fast things are accelerating.
Yeah, Tim, I know you're biased. I would argue it's optional, even though it's a very exciting field and a lot of stuff has been going on. We've flagged this, not this particular, but this type of development before. So I'd suggest we don't overdo it.
Yeah, I started there, Luda, but then I took a look at the paper underneath, and this is 50 times more efficient
Yeah,
from
I
a
know.
computational standpoint compared to AlphaFold. And AlphaFold, as I understand, is the standard. So I think it's a real breakthrough. In addition, the thing that struck me is this company's 5 years old. Think about that. In pharma. I mean, my goodness, pharma doesn't, I mean, whatever. Pharma goes back to, alchemists, for crying out loud. And these folks.
So maybe with that's what we highlight. Okay, I'm okay with important.
Yeah, I think we can mark it, definitely, an important article for people to read. It could be essential for the pharma, but I do think that there's a lot of value in taking the time to read this article, especially as Tim mentioned, it's not just a reduction, right, of time from the idea to now clinical trials, but there's even going to be, advancements in clinical trial management. Not by this company, but as we continue to look further into this area. So I think it's important to highlight it for our pharma executives and clients that we have quite a bit. So, all right, let's move on. We'll mark it as important for now. And the article number 3, please, also pharma related.
Yes. So this article is from Bain and Company, where they highlight how to successfully scale GenAI in pharma. But an interesting statistic from this article is around uh, the percentage of pharma companies that are including expected savings from GenAI in their 2024 budget. So the number is around 40%.
Okay, and John, would you like to kick us off for this article?
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually went all the way to essential. Woo! I'm really living dangerously this morning. And the reason I made it essential is, first of all, it's a very nicely data-driven activity, and I understand Bain is a bit of an advocate, and they're, it's not exactly science here; it's consulting. But I thought what was most interesting is all the different domains that these pharma companies are now applying generative AI. It could be sales, could be R&D, could be logistics, and they have. I think it's instructive for any executive to understand that in these, in our wins framework, these folks are holding a lever, right? They're not they're not in the crucible, because a lot of their cost base is still not words, images, numbers, and sounds. At the same time, they're finding tremendous value. The leading companies are finding tremendous value across different functions. So I rated it as essential for the broad market.
Thank you, John. Any other comments from the team?
Yeah, I was between important and essential again, because as John said, there's some interesting data here. And also, just as he said, I'll double down on it. The breadth was breathtaking in terms of, and it makes sense when you think about it, actually, because yes, you can say farmers do a lot of wet work in the labs and stuff that's not directly affected symbolically. But when you think about the hundreds of thousands of pages of documentation to submit a drug application and comply with the regulations around the world in different ways, the complexity of supporting a pharmaceutical sales staff that has very, very complex and regulated capabilities in the marketplace, there's a lot of places where they are hugely dependent upon this kind of stuff. So to see them using it across the board also, I think, re-emphasizes the point we've been making, that this is the year of production. We just saw that in the last one. These are production applications. These are not schoolyard, recess things. This is real stuff that they're using and showing impact in very short periods of time.
Yeah, I rated it as important, but would go with essential. For me, the operative word was at scale. So they are all thinking about, okay, we'll do this, but we'll need to implement it. And as a result, in this whole design and testing, they're taking into account that this will be an operatable system and out there in the field. So yeah, okay, essential for me.
Yep, sounds good. I had it as important, but happy to move it up to essential. The part that I really liked about the article was at the end, the top things, the top 3 things to scale had nothing to do with technology, right? It has to do with change management. It has to do with aligning on strategic initiatives, and then your talent pool. So I just think it's an easy read, but good content. So worth the time for our executives to take to read it. All right, so we will go with essential on Article 3. Let's move on to Article 4, please, Ankash.
Yes. The next article is again about AI agents, but this is more from a business context, how AI agents will be used as a new distribution channel by companies, and how our AI agents will be negotiating with other AI agents.
And Luda, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. It's a futuristic, somewhat article. There are not that many examples of real cases, but it makes an observation. Ankash, if you go up a little bit, the first little figure or table, this article makes an observation that all the other platforms like the PC, the internet have created a humongous, huge distribution structures. And AI is bound to do the same. And then it goes on to say this is how it might happen, and it's already happening in the software code generation area, that the agents can serve as essentially buying agent or distribution agents, and they can negotiate, they can go research which one is the best and then offer it to you. So it is not yet happening, but I thought it's a very important supposition, and it's likely to go this way. And so rated is important. It might be worth considering essential.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Luda. I mean, I marked it important too. I got to tell you, I love this article out of everything that we've read for today. I love this one because I just love the idea of in the future, we might be selling to the agents, right? Agents are better at comparing pricing, comparing options, going through the mechanics of purchasing, and just what that means from a sales and marketing perspective. And what is the agent going to look like, right? Are we going to personify it like a character? And how do we have marketing campaigns around it? I don't know. To me, it was just fascinating. And I love the parallel they drew with the software development side, how already today software developers are delegating those decisions to agents, right, of what code to use. So I thought the article was fascinating. I gave it an important as well. Anyone else from the team?
Ankaj, if you could scroll down a little bit, I also want to bring to people's attention further down on this page is a big graphic that's a great cheat sheet for the landscape right now in terms of the AI agents landscape. And so there's both open and closed source, and down the left side you'll see there's coding, productivity, et cetera, general programming. So this right here in itself, I think, is a worthwhile reason if you're looking to understand the landscape of these agentic systems. To have a look at this, because you'll quickly understand how big this field is and how fast it's growing. I would agree, it's important.
Any other comments before we move on to Article 5? All right, we're going with important. Thank you. Article 5. Paul, I know you were having a little bit of audio issues. You want to give it a try on this one after Ankaj introduces the article? All right, Ankash, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. So this one is from Conversica, which has released a brand-specific large language model, and the key pointers being that the model the chatbot that it has released does not hallucinate. It provides contextual responses, and it uses RAG capabilities to provide customer-specific data outputs.
Thank you. Let's try it, Paul.
I will be quick. Optional, I didn't see what was unique here. I love the term brand safe web chat, but this seems like a standard RAG implementation.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else would like to comment on this article?
Yeah, it's optional.
Yeah. Good idea as far as, having all of your brand specific things in an LLM and avoid issues. But yeah, I don't think there was any breaking news here. All right, so let's move on to Article 6, which is the last article. This was interesting too, on executive recruiting.
So this is from Spencer Stewart, an executive recruiting firm. So they have partnered with a company called Clue, which is a AI-powered chatbot, and they are using it to increase the effectiveness of their executive search.
John, would you like to give us your insights on this?
Sure. Sure. On this one, I just think it's optional, just interesting to note. Here's Spencer Stewart. for those of you who follow the executive search industry, right, there's Egon Zehnder, Spencer Stewart, Korn Ferry, and I'm forgetting the fourth one. They're the big four, who really dominate the top end of this marketplace. And to have them, Spencer Stewart, who's not known for being technologically forward, somebody like a Korn Ferry, Heidrick & Struggles is the fourth one, sorry. Somebody like a Korn Ferry is much more technologically savvy. For them to feel the need to team up with this, Clue, QLU, there's not a lot of data on Clue. I just think it really tells you how far the pressure is on these organizations. Spencer Stewart is still privately held. They've done some acquisitions and so forth, but at the very high end of the search market, you have people at least signaling that they're interested, and I think it's just a good contextual thing to have. So I'd rate it optional and interesting.
And the product, because I clicked on it, and the product is not yet available. Becomes available in April.
Correct.
So,
yep.
Yeah. Based on how we've ranked before, if the product is not available, we mark it as optional.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's a Barney. Paul needs this little Barney.
Yeah, but in a weird area.
I agree with John. It's interesting that the laggards, again, it's amazing how fast the market is moving towards production, not just towards fooling around.
Yeah. Well, what do they call it? Virtue signaling. This is kind of like AI signaling, right?
But the interesting thing was that it sounds like this particular company built a very focused LLM, and it trained it on all kinds of resumes that were in the databanks. They claim billions of resumes and billions of parameters. So this is actually interesting.
Yeah, that's a theme today in general. If you think about the protein discovery, it's trained on very specific data, not even what we think of as language in that case, but proteins, a different kind of language. I think the Conversica one was also trained on very specific data. I disagree that it won't, quote unquote, hallucinate, but it will hallucinate within the data on which it was trained, which is very, very specific. It's not a broad LLM. So I think we're going to see more of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it makes you curious. Where did they get all of that data for those profiles? Because I noticed that too, the billions of data that they have. I mean, are they just scraping LinkedIn and other
No. They're using Spencer Stewart databases. See, and Spencer Stewart has. I've worked with them before, and probably many people here have. They have very expert recruiters. Very good people and very good databases. So of executives, and those databases have staying power. So I think they used at least that, and then probably other things.
Right.
Yeah, the other things.
We're going to see a lot more. There's a lot of data out there, as John said, especially the unstructured landscape, and that's what's going to come to bear here.
Yeah. Did you do webinars? Did you do published papers? All of that, right? But all right, so let's wrap up today's meeting. Thank you so much, Ankash, for putting the summary. So as we can see, we have 1 essential, 3 important, 2 optional. So our busy executives have a little bit of homework to read some of these articles this week. And thank you all for your participation. And we'll be here tomorrow at 7:30. John or Paul, any announcements you'd like to make before we wrap up? No,
I just want to thank our sponsor, Custom GPT, for their support, and it's a great product, and happy to have them as a sponsor for our news event. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.